Hello ladies, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Aisha. I'm a feminine embodiment and self-trust coach, and I am on a mission to help 1 million women reclaim their confidence, embody their softness, and feel safe living the life they truly desire. So if you want to be my next big success story, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on powerful tips, inspiring stories, and essential guidance so that you too can manifest the life of your dreams. Today I'm going to be talking about So I had a conversation with my friend earlier, and basically, I think a lot of us, especially those of us who come from like a very oppressive and authoritarian structure at home that used guilt tripping as a way to motivate us to be successful or to correct behavior. And largely, as a revert and someone who was raised in Christianity, I was really taught that like when you fail, you're morally failing. When you fail, you're a bad person. When you do bad things, like people will think you're a bad person. And there's just so much shame involved in that. There's so much shame. And honestly, like there's so much manipulation in that like growing up in that conditioning really makes you believe that you're not a good person, that there's something wrong with you, right? And I want us to deconstruct that together. So if you were taught that when you get bad grades, that you're a bad person, if you're taught that when you're unable to regulate your emotions, that you're somehow failing, and you're a moral failure, not a skill, like failing at a skill, but a moral failure. Like it defines you as a person. If you were treated as less valuable or less good, less important, less pure, less whole, if you were failing at something externally, that conditions you with a lot of shame. It conditions you with a lot of guilt. It conditions you to believe that there's something wrong with you inherently. And a lot of trauma survivors have this belief. A lot of people who endured, like I said, their authoritarian parenting and, these like emotionally manipulative tactics to correct your behavior, it can be really difficult to then in adulthood separate yourself from your failings. You become identified with your failing. You become like if you, so the conversation specifically was surrounding parenting, and I know a lot of parents, we parent with a lot of guilt and shame because we were raised with a lot of guilt and shame. And when we see our children failing in a certain way, we over-identify and tell ourselves that we're bad parents, that we must be doing something wrong, though. There must be something wrong with us, that we are morally failing. And that's just not true. That's just not true. More often than not, when we're failing at something, it's a skill gap. It's a skill that we have yet to develop. It is a skill that we have yet to practice at. It's a skill that we need to work on in order to build and strengthen that skill in order to be successful at whatever it is, be that parenting, business, relationships, fitness, whatever the case. And manifestation is no different. I know a lot of the women that I work with, especially because relationships are so central to, sorry, I just woke up and took out my braid, but a lot of women are conditioned to value themselves based on their relationship status, based on their relationship to men, based on how they're performing in relationships, based on an external value system. And that leads you to questioning your worth and value as a person, as a human, whether you are good enough, whether you are special enough, whether you are worthy of love. And that can be so destructive. It can be so toxic. It can be so detrimental to your success in general. And so if you've been stuck, if you've been frustrated about manifestation, if you feel like you're climbing a hill and you're getting nowhere, and it's like, one step forward, 2 steps back, you feel like the more effort that you try to put in, the more frustration you end up with. It's likely because you were raised in a shame-based system, in an authoritarian shame-based system. And what this does is it teaches us that when we don't succeed, when we don't make our mark, like when we don't achieve whatever the goal is, that there's something wrong with us. There's something broken fundamentally. There's something that it's a person problem and not a skill gap. And manifestation is no different, right? Because we're unconsciously manifesting our whole lives until we become conscious of what we're manifesting. So much like when you're a kid, you don't really notice your eating habits. You're not really paying much attention to how you eat, what you eat. You kind of just eat whatever your parents give you. But then you get into adulthood and you've had a lifetime now of eating how your parents eat. So if your parents were not very health conscious, or they just didn't know about nutrition, or they couldn't afford good nutrition, then you get into adulthood, you're going to repeat the cycle. And until you wake up to it, until you realize, oh, eating this maybe isn't the best for my body. Eating this maybe isn't the best for my goals. Eating this maybe doesn't make me feel good. Then you become conscious of it. And then from there, it's a conscious choice. And because it's a conscious choice to identify with that version of yourself, then it becomes a conscious manifestation when you do it. And as we grow and change, as we become more conscious and aware, just because you have the awareness now of the habit doesn't mean that you have the skill to stop the habit. Doesn't mean that you have the skill to implement the new habits. And where a lot of people get stuck is, now you know what you're doing wrong. Now you know what you need to do, but the distance between where you are and what you're already, failing at, what you're doing incorrectly or out of alignment, feels so far away from where you want to be, what you want to be doing, what you believe you have to do to succeed. And in that gap is skill development. It is not a moral failing. If you don't have the skill to emotionally regulate, to calm yourself, to be peaceful, even in times of conflict, that's a skill gap. You are not a bad person for having overwhelming anger. You're not even a bad person for acting on that anger if you've never been given the skills, if you don't have the awareness. And once you have the awareness, then it becomes your responsibility. Even before you have the awareness, right? If other people are trying to get your awareness, there's nothing, it's not in your control. You cannot force yourself to be aware of what you're not aware of yet. Once you become aware, though, once you identify that you have a skill gap, once you recognize that there's room for growth, you get to challenge the old way of thinking. You get to challenge the old ways of living. You have an opportunity to build these new skills, then it becomes your responsibility. And if you are aware of it and have chosen not to try, if you've identified that you have a skill gap and your behavior is impacting other people negatively, and you choose to do nothing about it, that's when it becomes a moral failing. When you are aware that there's a better option, when you know that there are ways to develop the skill to be able to make it easier to choose that better option, but you're purposely just neglecting to do it, that's when it becomes a moral failing. But a skill gap is not automatically a moral failing, okay? Failing at manifestation is not automatically reflective of your worth and value. It doesn't make you a bad person. And even, there is some nuance here. Even once you are aware and the resources are out there, it's still going to take you time to recondition yourself. Because it's not the time passing doesn't do anything. It's the consistency, it's the choosing, it's the waking up moment by moment saying, this is how I'm going to be now. This is how my life is going to be now. But so many of you get emotionally wrapped up in the fact that you're failing at manifestation, or you're failing to be this version of yourself. And the shame takes over. And then you self-reject. You self-reject because you're like, well, if I'm not good enough, if I'm not worthy enough, if I'm not doing things right, then what's the point? How am I going to progress? How am I going to get out of this? How am I going to fix this? And you start to see yourself as broken. You see yourself as, again, like there's something wrong with you. And I'm here to remind you that there's nothing wrong with you. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's that you have a skill gap. And maybe the skill is catching the negative thoughts before they turn into negative behaviors. Maybe the skill is stopping the spiral before it happens, before you completely fall apart. Maybe it is catching yourself before you do something that you know is going to be triggering for you. Catching yourself before you do something that you know is going to cause you to go off course significantly. This can be building the skill of practicing meditation, building the skill of practicing scripting, practicing journaling of any kind, self-reflection. Maybe this is the skill of talking to yourself more positively, right? These are all skills that can be developed. I did not come to this planet good at what I do. I came to this planet with like just pure neutrality, maybe some natural inclinations, but everything that I've done to manifest, to be successful at manifesting, I had to work for. It was a skill I had to build. I used to speak very negatively to myself because I grew up in an environment with people speaking negatively about themselves and also with people speaking negatively towards me. Oh, my baby got food on my shoulder. That's like the shape of his mouth. So basically, like everything that I've had to learn about manifestation, I had to learn it. I had to build it. Everything about being a calm person, being a centered person, remaining calm in conflict, not getting overly defensive, being able to communicate forthright and not like beat around the bush or skirt around the issue, being able to communicate effectively, being able to communicate with precision. Those are all skills. Those are all things I had to develop within myself. I wasn't born just knowing how to do all these things. So they're like very talkative today. So if you want to get to a point where you're good at manifestation, that's possible for you. It's absolutely possible for you. It is absolutely accessible to you. The thing that stops you is you notice yourself failing, and then you shame yourself. You start doing a manifestation routine, or you start practicing certain methods and techniques. And then when you notice yourself failing, you take that as a reflection of who you're being, and you see it as a moral failing. And the difference between a moral failing and just a skill fail, like a skill gap, is that when you're building a skill, you genuinely want to do better. You're trying to do better. You're actively working at doing better. And you need to give yourself permission to be in the learning phase. You need to give yourself permission to be in this state of, I don't know how to do this yet. I'm not good at this yet. And that's okay. You need to be a beginner in order to become an expert. And I have been in the mindset space as a coach for 5 years now. I've been in the manifestation space as a coach for like 3-4 years now. I've been in the law of assumption space for 2 years now, almost 3 years now. And really, all that time I was developing my skills. Throughout all that time, I was changing my inner monologue. I was speaking kinder to myself. I was noticing my anxiety before it spiraled. I was noticing early signs of depression before it got out of hand. I was noticing when I was being overly complaining about circumstances. I was noticing more, I practiced noticing more things about how I was feeling, about how my external world was making me feel, about how my internal world was being reflected in my external world. And little by little, okay, it doesn't happen overnight. Little by little, I made the conscious decision to choose better, to do better. And, if I had truly allowed myself to sit in the toxicity of shaming myself, blaming myself, being resentful towards myself, being angry and frustrated towards myself, I wouldn't have made any progress. And any progress I made, I would have sabotaged. And for a while I did. For a while on my spiritual path, on my self-development path, changing my mindset, working through my depression and anxiety, I did do that. And it slowed my progress so much. And that's the point I want to get across in this video is, if you are consuming manifestation content, if you are watching content on self-development, if you're going to therapy, if you're reading books on how to communicate better and how to trying to learn how to regulate your nervous system, these are all good things. These are all good things. You will never not benefit from practicing this work. And so anytime that you start to feel like you're morally failing, anytime that you feel like you're stressed and you notice yourself really beating yourself up, I want you to pause and ask, where is this voice coming from? Where did I learn to talk to myself this way? Where did I learn to shame myself this way? Where did I learn that, like, this makes me a bad person? Where did I learn that if I'm failing, I'm just a terrible human? And how do I practice self-compassion in those moments? Because thinking that failing in life in any way, shape, or form makes you a bad person is not going to motivate you. It's not going to allow you to progress. It's not going to make it easier to then be a better person, to close those skill gaps by developing your skills. It's not going to help you. And in fact, it's gonna set you back, and it's gonna continue to hinder you. So if you want to be good at manifestation, if you want to, if you want to be able to rest in your feminine energy, if you want to be able to be more playful, if you want to enjoy your life more, enjoy your inner experience, create more success for yourself externally, have better relationships, have a better sex life, have a better relationship with your parents, have more robust friendships, have more intimacy in partnerships, have better business connections, and be able to network with more people on an impactful level, it starts with being a friend to yourself, being kind to yourself, allowing yourself to learn the skills, allowing yourself to be a beginner, allowing yourself to fail as many times as it takes, because if you're failing, you're trying. If you're failing, you're working towards success. And that is a beautiful thing. It is a necessary thing. So please go easy on yourself, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, be a better friend to yourself, because you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to make progress by shaming yourself, trying to guilt trip yourself into changing. It's not going to work. It might work in the short term, right? It'll correct your behavior in the moment, but then it'll pile on the stress. It'll pile on the negativity. It'll manifest more negative self-talk for you. So it's just not worth it. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope that you take my invitation to ease and join me in 30 Days of Softness as we go through different exercises in the month of December to learn nervous system regulation and practice different techniques and methods to create a state of ease within yourself, to put you in a mindset of peace, calm, and trust, so that you can manifest, right? This month is all about laying a foundation. We're setting ourselves up for success in the year of 2026 by practicing this ease and getting ourselves into a soft, malleable state, giving ourselves compassion, returning to what the self actually is, and not allowing external factors to define who that internal self is, so that we get to be the operant power of our life. We get to take the reins. We get to set the tone for the whole of 2026. So, and it's going to be a completely free, I don't want to call it a challenge. It's not a challenge. It's a completely free experience for you to be able to extend compassion to yourself, to cultivate a sense of inner peace. So I'm highly looking forward to it. I can't wait to start. And I intend that everything I said in this video, everything that will be integrated into this invitation to ease is going to be helpful to you. It is going to allow you to soften. It is going to allow you to come back to yourself, to come back to your power, to redirect yourself in a way that is smoother, less stressful, more peaceful, more joyful, more fun. So thank you again for everyone tuning in today, and for allowing me the space to teach from my own life lessons, to impart the wisdom that I've had to learn the hard way in many times, in many cases, and really just to be myself, to be my authentic self, to speak my truth, to share with you everything that I've learned and developed within myself, because every video that you watch helps motivate me, and it impacts all the people that I touch in my life. And every video that I share with you impacts you and all the people that you touch in your life. And one person by one person, one moment by one moment, one lesson by one lesson, one skill by one skill, we truly are changing this world that we live in for the better. So I want to take this moment to thank you for being dedicated to your growth, because you have no idea how many generations will feel this going forward. You have no idea how many people you are positively impacting by choosing to invest in yourself. So thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.